As I discussed in my last video, I have pretty extensive damage to the rotator cuff in my right shoulder. In that video, I showed exactly what the damage was, and in this video, I'm going to talk about what I did to cause all that damage and how it went on for so long without me really noticing it. My recent troubles have forced me to learn a little bit about tendons, tendinopathy, and tendon remodeling, so I'm also going to talk about that and about how my problems might be fixable. The good news is that tendinopathy, even including tendon tears, can often be healed using only exercise. You're watching Calisthenics Through the Ages. I'm Rob Peterson. I'm 54 years old, almost 55, and I'm determined to get past this little setback and carry on. I still want that planche and that one-arm pull-up. I have extensive tendinopathy of the rotator cuff, including 2 tears in the supraspinatus tendon. One of them is a half-thickness tear, and the other one is even worse, possibly a full-thickness tear. I also have tendinopathy near the head of the biceps tendon and degenerative tearing of the superior labrum. It's kind of embarrassing because at the end of last year, I put out this video. I described the linear periodization program I was using. I talked about how much injury-free progress I had recently made, and I kind of said that I had it all figured out. How to work out, how to make progress, and not get injured. And then, less than 2 months later, I ended up in pain and with this mess in my right shoulder. So what's up with that? How did I get it so wrong? Well, I stand by what I said in the video. I think the general approach is solid, although there are other valid approaches. I think that my problem was twofold. One, I believe that I had sort of a pre-existing condition in there. I think I already had extensive tendinopathy in my shoulder. And 2, I didn't entirely follow my own advice. I did follow it when it came to bent arm stuff like weighted pull-ups and handstand push-ups. At the beginning of this year, I started a new supercycle, and I started with low intensity and high reps, just as I described in that video. But for some reason, I also started going crazy with front lever and planche training. I just threw in about 20 sets of each, 4 or 5 different exercises, static and dynamic. And prior to that, I hadn't been doing much straight arm stuff, so my body wasn't used to it. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I think I thought that because planches and front levers are static holds, it's not as intense for the muscles, so I didn't have to worry about cycling things in the same way. It seems obvious in hindsight, but the truth is exactly the opposite. Intense static holds like the planche are extremely hard on tendons and ligaments, which adapt much more slowly than muscles do. So with those, it's even more important to not take things too fast. So, going way overboard with the planche and front lever training was the immediate cause of my pain and injury. I was going way too hard and probably not using the best form. However, my injury did not occur out of the blue. I believe that most of the damage to my rotator cuff was already there. I've hurt my shoulders many times through the years, and I could give you several examples, but I'm just going to give you one. When I was about 40, right around the time I started doing calisthenics seriously, I hurt my right shoulder pretty bad in the following way. I had young children at the time, and I was spending a lot of time on playgrounds. So I started doing what I did when I was a kid. I started swinging the monkey bars. Now as a kid, I was really good at this. I was pretty sure that I was the world's best human brachiator. Anyway, as I tend to do, I was doing it pretty extreme, going fast and jumping between the bars. Now that's fine when you're a kid, but maybe you should think twice about doing that when you're 40, especially when you're not warming up or taking any other precautions. So that went on for a while, and then one day, predictably, as I'm doing this, my right shoulder exploded in pain, and after that I stopped doing it. My shoulder hurt for months after that, but the pain eventually went away. Coincidentally, that was right around the time that I started dreaming about a one-arm pull-up, and I remember thinking that I wasn't sure how far I would get with this calisthenics stuff because I was pretty sure that my right shoulder was compromised. But nevertheless, after that I was able to train hard for almost 10 years with little or no shoulder pain. So I thought that my shoulder had healed. But now, after learning a lot about tendons, I don't think it ever healed. I think it remained injured the whole time. And then, as I aged, and as I slowly increased the intensity of the exercises I was doing, I think that I slowly increased the damage while remaining mostly unaware of it, until something in there finally gave out last February when I was training the planche. Now I said that I wasn't aware of it, but there were some warning signs that all was not well. And if you're older and you work out, you might want to pay attention to this part. About 6 years ago, both my shoulders started hurting intensely at the beginning of every workout. This happened out of the blue. I hadn't changed anything, but suddenly they hurt like crazy. However, after I warmed up, the pain would mostly subside, so I was able to continue working out. And I eventually changed things. Mostly I figured out how to warm up properly, and the pain subsided entirely. but it took about a year. And then something really scary happened. I used to do a ton of hanging leg raises. One day, about 3 or 4 years ago, while I was doing these, my shoulder felt like it briefly popped out of the socket. Ever since then, whenever I do them, my right shoulder hurts and feels unstable. And so now, I have to concentrate on protecting my shoulder while doing them, either by slightly bending my arms like this, or at least by intensely contracting all the muscles around my shoulder. So this kind of thing now makes me think that I actually had a lot of damage in my rotator cuff even before my recent injury. The fact that it hurt and felt unstable makes me think that I already had at least some tearing in the supraspinatus tendon. How is it possible that I had that much damage in there, to the extent that my shoulder had become unstable and I was starting to lose abilities without really noticing it? Well, part of it was that I was willfully ignoring signs of injury because I didn't really want to face up to it. But also, now that I've learned a lot about tendons, I realize that it is possible to have a lot of tendinopathy, even large tendon tears, without being in a lot of pain. As usual, I'm going to talk about things in which I am not really expert. Here's my current kind of cartoonish picture of how tendon damage works. Remember, I'm not an expert in this. Some of the details are likely to be wrong, but I think that something like this is true. Okay, most of the strength of tendons comes from collagen fibers, and in a healthy tendon, the collagen microfibrils are all lined up in the same direction, like uncooked spaghetti in a box. Now, tendinitis is inflammation of the tendon, but without structural damage. Tendinitis is painful, but it will go away with just rest. But the inflammation makes it more vulnerable to being damaged, so if you continue doing whatever you did to cause the tendinitis, it very well might get damaged soon and become tendinopathy. Tendinopathy involves structural damage. Here the collagen microfibrils become disorganized, a little bit more like cooked spaghetti. This causes the tendon to become less strong, less elastic, and less able to transmit force. If the tendon absorbs a sudden force when it's in this condition, it's more likely to break or tear than if it was healthy. Now, when the injury is fresh, this also hurts. It's also like tendinitis. But here's the thing. This will heal in the sense that it doesn't hurt anymore. But if you heal it by just resting, then the structural damage will remain, and that tendon will always be weaker than it used to be. And of course, if you continue with your activities, you'll probably accumulate more damage. I think that this is essentially what happened to me. I just kept damaging it and making it worse. Each time it would heal, meaning that it would feel better, but the underlying structural damage would remain, making it easier to re-injure. Incidentally, here's another thing. A while back, probably close to 10 years ago, I got pretty good at one-arm push-ups. I could do multiple reps on either arm, but in the last 3 or 4 years I had to stop doing them because it started to feel real scary on my right arm. It hurt, but it also felt like something in my shoulder was going to pop. Kind of similar to the hanging leg raises. And I believe that this is what will happen if you don't take care of your tendon problems. They never really heal. But the really good news, the great news, is that tendon problems, bad tendinopathy, even tears, can often be healed with exercise. Tendon remodeling is part of the healing process. Here's my little cartoon model showing a tendon with severe tendinopathy, this time including a tendon tear. Again, if you just rest, it'll stop hurting, but it will never repair. But if you put just the right kind of stress on it, it can heal. In principle, it can become as good as new again. It's interesting. It's not known exactly how the healing process works mechanistically. One model would be that the collagen microfibrils gradually repair and straighten back out, and the tendon ends up looking essentially like it originally did. That's what you might think happens, but studies suggest otherwise. People have had MRI scans before and after healing, that is, after complete healing in terms of function, meaning that the tendon can handle just as much stress as it ever could. Scans taken after the tendon has healed show that it looks pretty much the same as in the scans before healing, with the tears and everything. So another model is that the healthy part of the tendon gets beefed up, thicker or stronger somehow. I think that this is the model that scientists are currently leaning toward, but don't quote me on that. Again, not an expert. So how do you induce the tendon to heal? I'm not going to get too much into the specifics right now because I don't want to give bad advice. I will report on the results after I have a better idea of whether what I'm doing is working. There's a lot of great online resources for this kind of thing. I'll put links in the description. The basic idea is that you use exercises that target the muscle that's attached to your damaged tendon. It's generally stuff that's super boring, using bands or small dumbbells. You start the exercises using low intensity, high reps, and you do multiple sets every day. This stimulates the tendon and provides a lot of fluid and nutrient flow. Then gradually you increase the intensity and decrease the sets, reps, and frequency of the exercises. This encourages the tendon to slowly remodel and build back up to its previous levels of strength and elasticity. The bad news is that you have to stop all other exercises that involve the affected area. And since most things in calisthenics involve the shoulders, I've stopped most calisthenics training for the next 3 months or so. I'm not going to do anything involving overhead movements, like anything involving handstands or pull-ups. I will keep working out in some fashion, and I'm planning to put out some videos about alternative ways to exercise. Not doing any of the things that I love to do, not even handstands, is a hard pill to swallow. But I figure I can do it if it's just for a limited amount of time. Anyway, in spite of that, I'm actually pretty happy about things. I feel optimistic about this stuff for the first time in a long time. For years, things with my joints have been kind of trending downward, especially with my right shoulder. And the way I thought about it was, well, I'm getting older. Joint problems are inevitable. I just have to find ways to work out and do the things I want to be able to do without further injuring my joints. I have to find ways to work out intensely while babying my joints. And it worked okay. I had enough success that I could convince myself that I was on the right track. But at the same time, it was like, well, I seem to be having more and more shoulder pain, and I can't do one-arm push-ups anymore because they hurt too much. Maybe that'll get better if I leave it alone long enough. And oh, it's scary to do hanging leg raises now because it feels like my shoulder will pop out. That's okay, I'll just be real careful when I do them. I'm sure nothing else will go wrong. But I didn't know that there was something I could do to actually fix the problem. I didn't know about tendon remodeling and all that stuff. I figured I just had to live with whatever's wrong in there. But now I have hope. There are proactive steps that I can take. I might be able to completely heal my tendons so that my joints are solid again and I don't have to dance around my shoulder problem anymore. I might be able to work out pain-free. Even better, I might be able to sleep on my right side again. But I should point out an obvious caveat. The healing of tendons using physical therapy is definitely a thing. It does work in many cases, but it doesn't always work. And it's not clear whether it will work for someone of my age, and for someone with the amount of damage that I have. It'll be interesting to find out. I will definitely report on this going forward. And if I do manage to fix my tendon problems, it'll be back to work on that planche. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment if you have any thoughts. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more content like this. Good luck with your training, and I'll see you in the next video.